never been so much fun. Go up to your brother, kill him with your gun, leave him lying in his uniform, dying in the sun. Speak the ironic lyrics of this iconic Amiga game. Except since that time, FPS games, both realistic and not so, have been a great mainstay of the video game medium, so clearly war is fun, right? Well, no, of course not. The Call of Duties and whatnot aren't really representative of real life. Big surprise, I know. But are there games that are? Games that come close to it? Perhaps games that are less games and more simulations? Simulations based off games? Games used by the military itself? For what? Well, let's find out. Let's examine a couple, and we shall see what we find. I got interested in making this video after playing quite a bit of Arma 2 and Arma 3. When I was younger, I also played their predecessor, Operation Flashpoint. But to say I got anywhere in it, being 12 and not quite getting it, was an understatement. For those who may not know, Arma games are military simulator / military sandbox games developed by Bohemia Interactive. Now, it might look like a simple first-person shooter, but the focus is on shooting as much as it is on the wealth of other mechanics. All of them, except for your teammates' AI and their inability to do absolutely anything sensible like getting cover without you nursing them into it, provide for a very different experience, one with a focus on realism, tactics, equipment, and more. But why it's particularly relevant to this video is that while Arma is a commercial product for civilian use that may be described as a bit of militainment, there's a product that Bohemia, the studio that made Arma, also sells for military use. Now, VBS, or Virtual Battle Space, is created by Bohemia Simulations, which is nowadays a different and separate company from Bohemia Interactive, but they share similar roots. And it's based off the Arma engine, but little is known exactly how it works in the military itself, what the uses of it are, what stage of training or whatever that it's used in, but it's got real military hardware, and I assume it's used to learn such hardware, and a lot of systems and mechanics that would have an impact on the accuracy of simulations such as destructibility in environments and such. Whereas Arma is, well, it's a game. The graphics are a lot better in Arma, which I think is because top-of-the-line graphics aren't exactly the most important aspect of what a realistic simulation would have. It's the level of detail, I think, is what differentiates Arma and VBS the most. Not to say that Arma doesn't have enough detail by itself. While the arms and technology are all, at least in name, fictional, I think they're plenty detailed and clearly have real-world inspirations, which it doesn't take a huge genius to figure out. But back to the military version, as far as I can tell, there have been 3 or 4 versions of VBS. VBS, without any numbers, based off the real Virtuality 1 engine used in the game Operation Flashpoint Cold War Crisis, which is now more commonly known as Arma Cold War Assault after the trademark for Operation Flashpoint passed off to Ubisoft to die. VBS 2 was the next version based off the real Virtuality 2 engine, used in the first Arma game, Arma Armed Assault, not to be confused with Arma Cold War Assault, which is now technically the first Arma game retroactively, but whatever. If you're as lost as Arma AI gets, well, the rest is straightforward. Arma 2 used the real Virtuality 3 engine, which VBS 2 was also based off of, and after that, Arma 3 was created using the real Virtuality Engine 4, which VBS 3, as far as I understand, is not based on whatsoever, since the companies Bohemia Interactive and Bohemia Simulations pretty much split off entirely at that point. VBS 4 is supposedly a new version of the simulator that's not yet released but is in development, although I'm not sure. Apparently, VBS is in use in many places around the world. Canada, here in the UK, US, Australia. There is a mod for Arma 3 called Ace, which features similar mechanics to some of those present in VBS, such as more detailed medical systems, as opposed to just walking up to your teammates and healing whatever their injuries might be with the press of a button. And I have heard of some copies of VBS2 floating around out there on the internet. Personally, though, vanilla Arma 3 is just fine by me. But VBS and its citizen cousin Arma are far from the first time the military simulations and video games crossed paths. One of the earliest examples of video games being used as a basis for military simulation is Doom 2. Well, more specifically, a mod for Doom 2, a .wad file called marine.wad and commonly referred to as Marine Doom after its creators, the US Marine Corps, who created it for use in the USMC. According to the Doom Wiki, in 1995, General Charles C. Krulak, Commandant of the USMC, issued a directive to use war games for improving, quote, military thinking and decision-making exercises. He charged the Marine Combat Development Command with the task of developing, exploiting, and improving computer-based war games to train the US Marines for, quote, decision-making skills, particularly when live training time and opportunities were limited, end quote. A group of simulation experts in the Marine Corps Modeling and Simulation Management Office based in Quantico, Virginia, I hope I got that right, including Lieutenant Scott Barnett as the project officer, obtained a commercial copy of Doom and started designing a fire team simulation which focused on mutual fire team support, protection of the automatic rifleman, proper sequencing of an attack, ammunition discipline, and succession of command. But it was made public later by Sergeant Daniel G. Snyder. It's meant to be a 4-player co-op intended to be played on multiple computers networked together via the military simulation equivalent of a LAN party, probably excluding the Doritos part. And, thanks to the Sergeant, you're now enjoying some gameplay of it. I think the feature of this mod that most stands out to me is the distance of engagement. It is much further away due to the open nature of the map than what you would have in normal Doom. Also, this chain gunner has 450 health points instead of the usual 70, which is just the best. But I have to say, this is pretty incredible. The Doom Wiki then goes on to state that the game was superseded by America's Army in 2002, but I'm not quite sure if this is true. Supposedly Marine Doom was developed as a simulation for use in the USMC, although I don't know if it was ever actually used that way, and later it was publicly released, whereas America's Army seems to be a game that's very much targeting the commercial civilian market from the get-go. But what is America's Army?
One mission with this type of weaponry is the disposal of unexploded ordnance from a distance. Identify and destroy the mortar round. Congratulations, soldier. You are now qualified with the M82 rifle. Make us proud.
It's primarily a first-person shooter aimed to educate and inform people about the Army and the first video game ever published by the US Army itself. According to some, it's a realistic military simulation meant to give a taste as to what real service might entail to any who are interested. According to Chris Chambers, the former deputy director of development for the game, it is a recruitment tool. And Chris Morris of CNN/Money stated that the Army readily admits it is a propaganda device. As confirmed by Army Deputy Chief of Personnel Timothy Maude in testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee, the game aims to become part of youth culture's, quote, consideration set, end quote. So, make of it what you will. I decided to play it, the original, not the new versions. I mean, this is a retro gaming channel primarily, so why not? Turns out, though, it's multiplayer only for the most part, so I'm just gonna show you footage of various training exercises. Frankly, the game isn't really that interesting to me, perhaps due to my big aversion to multiplayer games and game modes. Any Arma footage that you've seen here is all single player. I just don't really like multiplayer games, I'm afraid.
Grab some fast food on base for lunch today?
Nah, let's go grab some Thai food.
We're going bowling on base tonight. Want to come along?
No thanks, I'm going to a movie.
Welcome to class, soldier. Let's get started. Throughout history, soldiers have been helping their injured buddies, and you will be no exception. If you see a wounded soldier, your first action is to help that buddy. Being here today shows that all of you have the desire to help, but the question is, do you know how? What we will attempt to do is give you an appreciation for the significance of prompt, effective first aid and the basic proficiency in the application of critical first aid skills. Performing first aid on a fellow human being is one of the purest examples of living up to the Army core values. It is our duty to learn first aid and our duty to provide first aid to others.
I gotta say though, I've never sat through a PowerPoint presentation, felt like I learned something, and got tested on it afterwards in a video game. This is kind of cool, to be honest. The history of it is nothing too particularly interesting, however. There have been several versions, spin-offs, including one for mobile phones by Gameloft. Remember Gameloft? That was an innocent time compared to now. They're all mostly the same thing. Nothing too crazy there. And you can get the latest version on Steam now. However, you can still play the original game's updated 2.5 version, as well as I believe the 2.8.5 version via aao25.com. That's how I'm playing it. Be warned though, it can take a little while to get it all working, but they have a helpful guide that can help you through it if you want to relive some nostalgia, if you've perhaps played it before, or if you're like me and just curious about this strange game. So yeah, I like my games old, just like I will be in a month, so this is footage from the 2.5 version of America's Army. While this is going on, though, it might be worth mentioning some other games. At this point, though, these are not so much video games or simulation platforms as much as specific interactive simulations that are kind of like video games in the basic sense that there is some sort of video signal and some sort of interactivity that influences this video signal. But they're not based off any commercial games like VBS and Arma, and they're not directly aimed at any civilian markets like America's Army or, you know, what have you. The point of them is definitely not entertainment, however, so in my book they don't necessarily qualify as video games, much like how Microsoft Excel isn't much of a video game. Some that I found are Urban Sim and Tactical Iraqi. They focus on counterinsurgency and language skills, for example. There's also a game that is both a military simulation sort of thing and also a commercial console video game. It's called Full Spectrum Warrior. The player issues orders and directions to virtual fire teams and squad members. It was released as two versions, one for civilian and one for military use, with the military version actually being unlockable with a cheat code within the game. Another version of the game called Full Spectrum Command would be introduced later for company commanders. Apparently, though, the project failed as a training tool and cost the government, quote, millions of dollars to produce, end quote, while the video game company THQ made over $50 million from the project. Still didn't save a poor old THQ in the end, though. The command mechanic and orders mechanic from Full Spectrum Warrior sort of reminds me of my childhood favorite war game, SOCOM Combined Assault, as well as other titles in the SOCOM series for the PSP like Fireteam Bravo 2 and 3, which I loved and played all the time as a kid, and of which I mostly remember the theme from Combined Assault, which, to use a colloquial term, absolutely slaps. I would show you more of it, but honestly, I'll probably just stream it at some point so you can get the full experience of my nostalgia glasses just falling apart when it turns out the game hasn't aged half as well as I thought it would. So we got training video games, we got possibly recruitment propaganda video games, we got a pretty cool Doom mod, but I think that one thing I want to mention, certainly a worthy mention, are quote-unquote video games used in clinical settings to help treat PTSD in real war veterans. Simulators such as Virtual Afghanistan use head-mounted displays to create quote immersive interactive environments, end quote. With the help of clinicians in controlled settings, soldiers are able to confront traumatic memories in a process called exposure therapy. So, in conclusion, there's some history there, some interesting things. Obviously it's not complete. I wanted to just pick out some notable bits here and there. And, well, I described it. If that's all you came here for, click off the video right now. But for those who are left, I want to give this a bit of a conclusion. All this research, no matter how much I wanted to stick to just the details, would be incomplete without interpretation. It would be lacking context, information without meaning, lack of a statement becoming a statement itself. And that left me feeling conflicted. Even my childhood favorite, SOCOM Combined Assault, has opening titles that gave me a distinct impression upon replaying it for this video of someone trying to direct me somewhere, connect a piece of virtual entertainment to a reality far removed from the innocence of video games. For myself, growing up in Russia, it just seemed like a cool detail adding to the realism and the credentials of the game, but as an adult, I can't ignore that perhaps someone out there followed through on this, and I wonder whether that's a good thing. Dwelling on the nature of it all, I wonder why I expected to feel anything else making this video. Geopolitics and wars are a messy business, and I think the history of the relationship between video games and the military sort of reflect that. And that's just the direct relationship. There's also, of course, the US Army recruiting gamers at esports tournaments and promoting itself via Twitch, allegedly even to be drone pilots because of transferable skills. Yeah, you know. In this Vice documentary that I'm referencing with that particular last point, they say that it's not that different. And that's kind of scary, isn't it? In this brief and incomplete history, we found games that are just games based on whether you like it or not, a part of the human condition from the time humans first realized the destructive power of sticks and stones. And there are games that might be considered as propaganda machines, failed training tools made by now defunct video game developers, an amazing Doom mod, and what I imagine are helpful simulations in preparing real-life soldiers for situations they might encounter in service. All that deliberation, and it's too wide a gamut to make a generalized statement about, so I'll let you, the viewer, make up your own mind about it. But at least, reading about video games, video games in quotes, simulations perhaps is a better term, used to treat PTSD, technology used to better the lives of those affected, is something I can feel truly decisively positive about. Something good has come from it all. And if there's one conclusion I've drawn from all this for myself at the expense of sounding like I'm attempting to dispense morality, war is not fun. But Arma most certainly is. Thank you for watching. Hope you've liked this video. Leave a comment below what you thought about this, all of this, or some of this. It's up to you. And subscribe if you're interested in video games and technology and stuff. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Bye.